In the medieval world, beauty wasn't just a matter of personal vanity. It was a form of social currency. Your appearance could directly shape how you were treated, and the idea of what made someone beautiful was often unusual, sometimes confusing, yet always taken with the utmost seriousness. In medieval Europe, the highest ideal of beauty among the nobility was clear, pale, almost translucent skin. Unlike modern times, where many people crave that sun-kissed glow, the elite of the Middle Ages strived for the opposite. A ghostly complexion was seen as the ultimate symbol of privilege. Why? Because it screamed to the world that you didn't labor outdoors like the lower classes. Your pallor announced, without words, that you belonged to a life of luxury far from the fields and sun. Noble women, in particular, took their devotion to paleness to extreme and often absurd lengths. They stayed hidden beneath parasols, covered their faces with wide-brimmed hats and veils, and in some cases, avoided going outside entirely during the sunniest months. Some records suggest noble ladies timed their walks to dawn or dusk, slipping into the outdoors only when the sunlight was weakest. Even their living spaces were adapted for this obsession. Castle windows were sometimes draped in gauzy fabrics to dull the light, casting rooms in an ever-dim glow. The truly dedicated didn't stop at sun avoidance. They turned to cosmetics, specifically, dangerous mixtures made with white lead, to exaggerate their already pale skin. Yes, they willingly smeared poisonous substances on their faces in pursuit of beauty. The phrase, dying to be beautiful, was more literal than anyone might expect. These toxic mixtures came at a high cost. Repeated use led to hair falling out, tooth decay, and severe skin damage. Many women experienced long-term health effects, trembling limbs, kidney failure, and in extreme cases, death from lead poisoning. Their beauty regimen, in essence, was a slow-motion tragedy. Applies to face, wait a few decades, and then prepare the funeral. Despite the clear health dangers, the practice didn't fade easily. The societal benefits of appearing pale and refined outweighed even the most obvious consequences. Queen Elizabeth I became the most iconic representative of this trend, wearing layers upon layers of white lead makeup. As she aged, her signature mask of youth grew thicker, reportedly cracking when she smiled or frowned. Washing it off, not an option. Most noble women avoided cleaning their faces properly, choosing instead to reapply new layers over the old ones, like painting over decay. For those unable to afford the deadly lead concoctions, there were other methods to chase that coveted ghostly appearance. Some soaked themselves in milk baths or crafted face masks from breadcrumbs steeped in rose water. Others crushed eggshells into powder, or more disturbingly, used leeches on their skin to remove blood and achieve that drained, pale look. Beauty meant sacrifice, even if that sacrifice involved letting creatures suck your face. This bizarre dedication to paleness wasn't limited to the upper classes. Commoners also participated, albeit in less extreme ways. Though they couldn't mirror the nobility's powder-white faces, peasant women sometimes dusted their cheeks with chalk or flour for special occasions like weddings or religious festivals. For them, it wasn't about imitating wealth so much as standing out for a day, looking their best when it mattered most. Meanwhile, the beauty standards for the working class diverged significantly. While the nobility prized delicacy and fragility, peasants admired the exact opposite. In rural communities, beauty was linked to survival. Endurance, strength, and resilience were the traits people found most attractive. The ideal body wasn't slim or dainty. It was functional. Across Europe's villages and farmlands, the most desirable person wasn't the one with perfect facial features. It was the one who could haul buckets, chop wood, and still have enough energy left to dance at the harvest celebration. Long before gym culture and fitness apps, Peasants were living out their version of strong is sexy. Archaeological evidence backs this up. Studies of medieval skeletons show that the average male peasant had arm bones stronger than many modern athletes, especially the right arm, which bore the brunt of constant manual labor. Years of swinging plows, hammers, and scythe-shaped bodies that didn't need gym memberships, just daily survival. The ideal medieval man had wide shoulders, robust arms, and a back built for endurance. Abs weren't on anyone's checklist. Women didn't swoon over lean frames. They looked for evidence of physical capability. Could this man help raise a barn? Could he chop enough firewood for the winter? That was husband material. And women were judged by similar standards. A woman admired in her community wasn't the dainty type who fluttered about. She was the one who could carry 2 heavy buckets up a hill without stopping for breath. Young men, according to various historical accounts, would often observe a girl at work to gauge her strength and stamina before making marriage proposals. Delicate features raised eyebrows, not hearts. Could she survive childbirth? Could she keep a household going if tragedy struck? These were the real questions. A medieval woman's dating profile would have boasted about her ability to thresh wheat for hours, not her favorite poetry or hobbies. Medieval literature offers some colorful clues. In poems and songs, the ideal woman is often described with firm hands, a straight back, and arms strong enough to carry grain. One 14th century ballad even praises a miller's daughter for her ability to lift a sack of flour single-handedly. Not exactly today's version of a love song, but it speaks volumes about what people valued. Even the calluses on a person's hands carried meaning. Today, those hands would be slathered in lotion and posted as #self-care. But back then, they were worn with pride. Soft, unmarked hands? That meant you either came from nobility or, worse, didn't pull your weight. Calluses were proof of character, a kind of medieval resume etched into your skin. They weren't flaws. They were credentials. Yet, despite all the distinctions between noble and peasant life, there was one shared marker of beauty that cut across class lines: hair. Whether you lived in a cold stone castle or a simple wooden hut, having luscious, well-kept hair could elevate your appearance in a way everyone recognized. In a world divided by wealth, labor, and status, beautiful hair was one thing everyone could admire. For women in medieval times, long, cascading hair wasn't just a fashion statement. It was often considered her most treasured physical attribute. In a world without portraits or selfies, a woman's hair served as her walking advertisement, her medieval version of a profile picture. People back then genuinely believed that hair said everything about you: your age, your health, even your personality. Thick, shiny tresses were signs of good health and youthful energy, while limp or thinning hair was associated with aging or illness. Most women allowed their hair to grow as long as their genetics would permit, in some cases reaching down to their knees or even ankles. For unmarried girls, loose hair was a visual cue. It signaled their purity and availability for marriage. On the other hand, married women were expected to cover their hair modestly, often with layers of veils, hoods, or intricately constructed headdresses. Marriage didn't just come with a husband. It came with a farewell to flowing locks and a lifelong commitment to head coverings. For noble women, hair care wasn't a casual affair. It was an elaborate daily ritual. Wealthy ladies often had personal attendants whose primary duty was to cleanse, groom, and style their hair, sometimes devoting hours every single day to the task. Their combs, often made from ivory or finely carved boxwood, were closely spaced to catch lice and nits, because even the most glamorous women weren't immune to medieval bugs. In fact, Nitpicking became a social bonding activity, much like today's spa days or Netflix marathons. Sitting together for hours, grooming one another's hair, was intimate and oddly comforting. They even had decorative boxes to store their combs, adorned with jewels or intricate metalwork, because when you're scratching your scalp, you might as well do it in style. Among noble women, one hair color stood above the rest: blonde. The obsession with golden hair was so intense that women went to astonishing, and sometimes disgusting, lengths to achieve it. They would concoct dye mixtures using ingredients ranging from precious saffron to foul-smelling horse urine. Others soaked their hair in lye, a corrosive substance more suited for soap making, then baked themselves in the sun for hours to lighten their locks. Unsurprisingly, these treatments often resulted in scalp burns and brittle, damaged hair. Their version of "maybe she's born with it" was more like, "Nope, it's chemical burns and horse pee." But to them, it was worth it. Blonde hair symbolized purity, youth, and holiness, ideals reinforced through religious artwork where angels and saints were often depicted with golden halos and fair hair. While luscious locks framed the face, it was your skin that told the whole story. In the medieval worldview, the face acted like a window into your soul, and more importantly, your internal health. People believed that your skin reflected the delicate balance of the body's four humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Clear, glowing skin wasn't just pretty. It was proof that your body was functioning in perfect harmony. Your complexion was considered a map of your health, emotions, and even your moral character. Medical writings from the time warned that blemishes, rashes, or discoloration weren't merely cosmetic concerns. They were evidence of deeper imbalances or even sinful behavior. If you had pimples, society might suspect you were gluttonous, lustful, or overly emotional. Essentially, acne was seen as a moral failing, not a phase of puberty. Teenagers today may worry about breakouts before a school dance. Back then, a breakout could earn you a reputation for poor self-control and impure thoughts. The ideal complexion struck a delicate balance, not ghostly pale, which suggested sickness, and not overly red, which hinted at drunkenness or rage. A gentle blush on the cheeks was just right, implying good circulation, emotional stability, and a healthy body. But achieving this Goldilocks glow was harder than it looked. You needed to appear well-rested without looking idle, lively without seeming hot-tempered, and beautiful without looking like you were trying too hard. If medieval influencers had existed, their tutorials might have been called "How to Look Like You've Never Felt a Single Emotion." Beauty standards didn't stop at the face. The entire body was under scrutiny, especially for women. Today's culture often glamorizes thinness, but in the medieval world, being soft and full-bodied was a symbol of wealth, fertility, and prosperity. When you open a medieval manuscript or gaze at religious paintings from the time, you'll notice a striking pattern. Round cheeks, generous curves, and soft bellies were the norm, and they were celebrated. A fuller figure was a direct reflection of your status. In a society where famine was always lurking, having visible fat meant you were well-fed and likely came from a family of means. Thinness, by contrast, wasn't admired, it was pitied. It usually meant illness, poverty, or malnourishment. In fact, if medieval women had diet books, the titles would have sounded more like "How to Gain Weight and Get Married Faster." For noble women especially, a slightly pronounced belly wasn't something to hide, it was considered beautiful. It hinted at fertility, which was paramount in a world that valued women most for their ability to bear children. Some dresses were even designed with high waistlines to enhance and emphasize this rounded shape. Today's fashion tells women to suck in their stomachs for photos. Medieval fashion whispered, "Push it out. Show them you're fertile and well-fed." But beyond body curves, there was another obsession that might surprise you: the forehead. One of the most extreme beauty trends of the time revolved around the idea that the taller your forehead, the more elegant and noble you appeared. Women would go to shocking lengths to elongate this area, including pulling out their own hair. And we're not just talking about a pluck here or there. Many women removed entire swaths of hair from the front of their scalps, creating artificially receding hairlines that stretched halfway up their heads. Paintings from the 14th and 15th centuries often show women with exaggeratedly large foreheads, taking up nearly a third of the face. To modern eyes, it might look bizarre, but to medieval observers, it was the pinnacle of refinement. They didn't have access to today's cosmetic procedures like Botox or contouring, but they had their own painful alternatives. Women used metal tweezers, rough waxing pastes, and even applied caustic substances, some with ingredients as revolting as animal waste, to suppress hair growth. In other words, while noble women may not have had Instagram, they were certainly willing to suffer for a good look. And that look, sometimes, came at the cost of permanent scarring and chronic skin damage, all in the name of forehead fashion. These women were quite literally dragging metal across their foreheads, trying to erase their natural hairlines. A hairline so high it could reach heaven. Beauty standards like that didn't just raise eyebrows, they plucked them off. The agony must have been intense. But as the old saying goes, beauty demands sacrifice. And in medieval times, that sacrifice looked like a 5-hour tweezathon followed by smearing your scalp with fermented cat feces. Seriously. And while we're already reeling from the trauma above the eyes, let's move lower, to a part of the face that had surprising importance: the mouth. Yes, say, because medieval folks cared more about teeth than most people think. In a time before fluoride, dentists, or bubblegum-flavored toothpaste, keeping a decent set of chompers took effort, creativity, and a bit of medieval magic or madness. Dental care back then was basically hope for the best, then replace the worst. When your molars crumbled, some folks turned to purchasing teeth from the recently deceased. Tooth fairy meets grave robber. Unlike today's obsession with perfect, white veneers, medieval beauty standards didn't expect dazzling perfection. The bar was significantly lower. Just having a mostly complete set of teeth that weren't totally black with rot was considered winning the oral lottery. That said, many people still didn't make the cut. By the time you hit 30, it wasn't uncommon to be missing several teeth, with gum disease doing most of the heavy lifting. Oddly enough, one feature we often fix today was once seen as a romantic bonus: a slight gap between the front teeth. Poets called it the lover's window, or the door to paradise. This charming little space was believed to signify sensuality, an open heart, and even generosity of spirit. In fact, love poems of the time went out of their way to mention it, comparing that tiny gap to a symbolic entrance to the soul. And for those not born with it, some people took to filing their teeth to create one. Cosmetic dentistry, medieval style, more pain, less Novocaine. It's proof that across time, humans will always find inventive ways to alter what nature gave them in pursuit of beauty. But not all beauty could be seen, or even touched. In a world without showers, laundry machines, or sweet-smelling deodorants, scent played a major role in attraction. Smelling nice was a feat of epic proportions, especially in an age when bathing was rare and perfume was reserved for the elite. Despite the stereotype, medieval people didn't embrace being dirty. Most genuinely cared about personal hygiene. They just had fewer opportunities to act on it. When your romantic options were limited to your tiny village, you really didn't want to be the one whose aroma preceded them by several feet. Bathhouses were common and widely used until the 14th century plague years, when the idea of sharing tubs began to feel risky. Suspicion of disease led many to skip full-body immersion baths entirely. Still, people frequently washed their faces, hands, and the essential zones using basins of water. Full-on bathing? Maybe a few times per year for the common folk. The wealthy, of course, indulged a little more often. A noblewoman's spa day was, let's clean the whole body this month. Doesn't exactly scream luxury by today's standards, but it was pretty upscale for the time. And since daily baths weren't feasible, folks got resourceful. Linen underclothes were worn beneath finer outer garments because linen could be washed often. Instead of scrubbing their bodies, people simply changed their underlayers when things got too funky. It was basically the medieval version of, if your shirt walks before you do, it's laundry day. Now, while things like skin, smell, and teeth certainly mattered, medieval beauty didn't end with appearances. There was another layer to the ideal woman, one that had nothing to do with her reflection. In the Middle Ages, being beautiful also meant behaving beautifully. For women, particularly, grace and modesty weren't just social expectations. They were beauty standards. A lovely face could only get you so far. What truly mattered was how softly you spoke, how quietly you walked, and how politely you carried yourself. Modesty wasn't just encouraged. It was demanded, to the point of performance. High-born girls were trained for years in the art of movement and speech. They learned to glide rather than walk, to cast their gaze downward in the presence of men, and to speak in tones so delicate they could barely be heard. Medieval charm school might as well have been titled How to Be Invisible but Graceful. Even posture was regulated. Some noble families went so far as to strap wooden boards to girls' backs to train them not to slouch. Etiquette guides of the time left no behavior unexplained. A 15th century conduct book advised women to laugh without showing their teeth and to take small, slow steps so they wouldn't appear hasty. Another manual claimed that a truly beautiful woman should only speak when spoken to, and always stand with her hands gently folded at the waist. Try doing all that and sneezing politely at the same time. Exhausting. But beauty wasn't only about pleasing nobility. It was also about pleasing God. In medieval Europe, religion wasn't just a part of daily life. It was the life. Looking properly devout was another layer of attractiveness, especially during holy festivals or religious seasons. Religious beauty was all about restraint. The more subdued your appearance, the more admired your piety. Church fashion wasn't just modest. It was symbolic. The color of your garments, how much hair you covered, and whether or not you wore visible symbols of faith like crosses or rosaries all mattered. During seasons like Lent or Advent, dressing too brightly or too extravagantly could land you in serious trouble with your local priest. And yes, showing up to Mass in last week's outfit or the wrong color might have earned you more than just a judgmental glance from the church ladies. Church wasn't merely a place of worship. It was the original runway, where the prize wasn't applause, but a perceived shot at eternal salvation. Truly devout women often had entire wardrobes dedicated to religious observance, hand-sewn garments passed down like relics, imbued with meaning. Deep blues and soft whites, symbolic of the Virgin Mary, were especially cherished. This wasn't about fashion for fashion's sake. It was a sacred language of fabric, a way to display inner purity through outward modesty. In the end, while medieval beauty rituals might shock us today, from high foreheads and tooth gaps to perfumed undergarments and cat poop facials, every one of them made perfect sense then. Just as future generations may one day look back at our beauty standards with disbelief, because beauty has never been objective. It's always been cultural, sculpted by belief systems, economic conditions, and spiritual ideals. The medieval obsession with piety and presentation might seem bizarre now, but at its heart, it's a reflection of something universal, the human desire to belong, to be seen, and to be valued. If these strange but true glimpses into the past intrigue you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Vassal Truths. Here, we don't just tell stories. We reveal the weird, the witty, and the wonderfully raw realities that history tried to dress up. Stick around. The truth beneath the velvet is always stranger than fiction.